Okay, so first off, I need to say, we will be recording this off of the 3DS because every time I try to record off the Wii U with HDMI, the footage would come out super fucking choppy, and well, I need to fix that, so 3DS it is. Oh, and it might help to first watch the original Monster Hunter video I did before you watch this one. Might help. Anyway, moving on. So, in the US, we missed out on the original Monster Hunter 2 games, which were released back on the PlayStation 2, because Monster Hunter just wasn't that popular outside of Japan, which is a shame since those games introduced some new things into the series, like the ice element. Thankfully for you PSP owners, the second generation was ported to the system and was released in the US as Monster Hunter Freedom, as well as a G expansion called Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. But again, I don't have a PSP. So, we're moving on to the third generation, mostly. Yeah, I didn't play the original Monster Hunter Tri because, well, it was on the Wii, and since the original Monster Hunter used joysticks for combat, I was worried that Tri would use waggle controls, and that scared me. I didn't actually get through U when it first came out. I remember seeing an article on the 3DS version, which had me interested, but because the 3DS had only been out for a short time, I wasn't sure how a Monster Hunter game would play on a handheld. That and the article didn't show any hunting gameplay, so I didn't get it, and forgot to keep an eye on the development when other things started going on in my life. It wasn't until I saw the trailer for Monster Hunter 4U that I picked up 3U on the 3DS and later on the Wii U. At this point, I started to follow some Monster Hunter YouTube channels, and a lot of the American ones were saying that they got into the series with this generation, and that got me even more curious to play the game. So with that kinda lengthy intro out of the way, is it still worth playing Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate? Hey, we actually have a bit more story this time. I mean, yeah, it's about your character working their way up to be a monster hunter, like before, but there is some extra context here. You see, there's this village, Moga Village, and they have been dealing with some earthquakes that are affecting their way of life. So they call out for a hunter since they believe it's a leviathan called Lagiacrus causing all the damage. And this is where you come into play, as you are the hunter that they hire. Sure, it's not much in terms of a setup, but it actually kinda works, helping the villagers as their issues get worse, and in the end, saving the village from essentially death, and proving yourself a monster hunter becomes a satisfying experience. It provides enough context to why you're there, and gives enough motivation to save the village. Plus, the villagers you interact with are quite memorable and even likable, except for that damn kid who tends to get in my way when I'm leaving for a hunt. Okay, so first things first, the basic structure of the gameplay is the same as before. You hunt monsters, you make weapons and armor from these monsters to hunt, well, stronger monsters. The hub village this time is Moga Village, where you can visit the shop, guild girl to take quests, your house, the blacksmith, and the farm. At your house, you can save your game, store items, and manage your equipment. One really nice new feature for the item box would be the combo list, which lets you combine items easier, so yeah, it's pretty freaking useful. Moving on, we have the blacksmith, who can make you new weapons and armor and upgrade your equipment. Oh yeah, you can now upgrade armor with these armor spheres, so it's pretty nice. Also, it doesn't matter if you have materials in your item box or your pouch. As long as you have them, the blacksmith's gonna help you out. Not to mention, now armor has skill points, so you put on an armor set that has enough skill points and bada bing bada boom, you get a skill. Most of these skills are useful, like sharpness +1, evasion +1, negate poison, and the godliness that is earplugs. I love this skill so much. Careful though, as some armor sets have negative skills, but you can counter this with talismans and decorations. Basically, there's a lot of depth and experimentation when it comes to the armor skills. The farm I had mentioned before is quite necessary for when you get to the later part of the game. You use the farm for multiplying items like blue mushrooms, sap plants, and honey, though you're gonna need resource points to do this. Resource points can be earned by killing monsters in the Moga Woods, which is a map you can visit and hunt monsters and gather materials for an unlimited amount of time. Or you can earn them by trading in materials like lava nuggets, which you can get from the Uragan. Hint hint, this is what I do. Before starting a quest, you can now eat meals to give yourself some boosts, like extra health and defense. Just like before, there are still gather quests, hunting quests, and capture quests. Oh, and egg quests still suck. A new type of quests are harvest quests, where you can explore a map to gather materials on your own time, which is so needed after playing the original Monster Hunter. Hunting monsters is still action-oriented, where you need to block or evade monsters' attacks while striking them when it's safe and managing your character's conditions at the same time. Thankfully, combat is now assigned to buttons rather than the joystick. Plus, you can lock onto monsters and the camera is so much more cooperative, though it can still get stuck at times. We also have new weapons, like longsword, switch axe, hunting horn, and gun lance. Oh, and now we have the light bow gun, heavy bow gun, and the bow, but those are long-range weapons, which I don't touch. I really like how weapons have their own unique combos, and even dual blades are now a weapon class. Personally, I really like longsword, dual blades, and most of all, sword and shield. Like, holy crap, this is such a versatile weapon now. Not only that, but smaller mechanics of the gameplay have been tweaked. So to keep this video from being like 9 hours long, here's a brief list of some of the depth to the game. Cutting versus impact damage, blight resistance, staggering monsters, weapon affinity, and that small amount of iframes you get when dodge rolling that make you feel like a boss when you dodge through an attack. The problem with this is that the learning curve is really high, and the game never tells you any of this. So it can take some time getting into the series. Like, gee Capcom, sure would have been nice to know about the Superman dive through the game rather than on YouTube when I was in late high rank. Speaking of ranks, that's now a thing. You start off in low rank. After you beat the final boss of the story mode, then you can take on high rank. And in high rank, monsters are much tougher. There's also subspecies, which are altered versions of monsters you've hunted before, and you're just thrown in random locations at the map. For me, high rank is actually the most fun in terms of challenge. There's also a G rank, but that's multiplayer only. Though, playing Monster Hunter with friends is so much fun. Well, I think it's fun in this game. I wouldn't know because every time I join someone's gathering hall, I get kicked out. Fucking assholes. Oh yeah, and G rank is super damn hard. I recommend playing this with 4 other people because otherwise, fuck that. Okay, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, or I guess the Duramboros in the room. Let's talk about the underwater mechanics. When it comes to exploring, I like it. The underwater can be a cool setting and it's very atmospheric. Hunting monsters though, kinda sucks ass. My problems with the combat is that your character is so sluggish. You're slower, and there's limited mobility for evasion, while the monsters are faster and don't stay in one spot for more than 3 seconds, making things tedious. There aren't too many monsters to hunt underwater, thankfully, and to make up for that, there are a lot of cool monsters to hunt, like the Baroth, Giganox, Barioth, and Ignactor. Once again, this game looks very good visually on both the Wii U and the 3DS, though the level of detail in the environments and monsters stand out more on the Wii U version, even if some of the textures are kinda off. But the 3DS version has the better text because it's actually readable. One thing that really stands out to me is just how vibrant the colors in this game are. From the great use of greens and blues in the deserted island to the great shades of red in the volcano. To me, the art direction has been at its best so far in the series with Monster Hunter 3U. What I mean is, the game's main theme is water, which is used to connect all the locations to one another, as you'll find water in each of them. And all the new monsters feel like they belong in these environments, as well as having a consistent art style. Even the 2 towns you can visit each have boat ports, helping add to the region's consistency. To date, this has been the most realized and consistent region I've experienced in the series so far. While the hunters have some recycled animations, it still looks quite good. And of course, the monsters have great animation for their actions. The music still has a nice high fantasy style to it, with some monsters even having their own themes now. Some great pieces of music worth listening to would of course be the main theme. Then you have the Lagiacrus's theme, the Sideuses, Deviljos, Brachydioses, and Zenogres, and this is just to name a few. Basically, the music in this game is definitely worth giving a listen to if you like that fantasy style. So, would I recommend Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate? Yeah, actually I would. Personally, I quite enjoy playing this game. It's added enough improvements to the series that I think even people who are new to the series could get into it. Don't get me wrong, the game is a bit slow to start, and I'm not a fan of the underwater combat, and the learning curve is quite steep. Plus, if I'm being completely honest, this is not the first game I would suggest to newcomers. But it's still fun hunting monsters, it has a cool location, and the controls and mechanics are much better than the original. Again, yeah, there's quite a steep learning curve, but if I'm being completely honest, this is something you could say about the whole series thus far. I can see why people started getting in this series because of this game. So if you've only played Monster Hunter 4U and up, and you really enjoy them, then hell yeah, I think you should play this game. It's this generation where the series started getting more recognition in the US, which I am very grateful for. Plus, you need something to play on your Wii U. Join me next time where we take a look at a game that truly changed things for the series outside Japan.